How's it going? I'm Peter McVeigh. I'm a musician from Belfast, and I thought I'd make a wee public comment on maybe the progression of music in Northern Ireland. Uh, After sort of seeing that it looks like we might finally be getting the funding back or allocated the funding, hopefully, that it goes to the right places from the Northern Ireland Executive. I just wanted to make some points and things that maybe we could all publicly comment on and share our own views publicly. I am aware that after this, that we're seen as something that is a second thought. There's no real representation. We're not represented really by the Musicians Union, particularly well here in Northern Ireland. And we have been kind of thrown under the bus by the hospitality sector as of late. Now, we contribute a lot to the hospitality sector, and I think there's a lot to be said in terms of us working with them and helping to generate more revenue for Northern Ireland, but we also bring in a lot of tourism here. Um, there's not a job in town, for example, or around Northern Ireland for the most part these days, where you're paid cash in hand. So that sort of get that out of the way now. You invoice for most things. It's a legitimate business. You pay tax on all these things, and we've sort of been forgot about and just let go. There's a whole industry around us as well as those gigs get bigger and all these people have jobs, and this has sort of been forgot about. But with that in mind, hopefully the funding that's going in is going to go to the right places. It goes to individuals, to organisations that need it, and we can create a bit of breathing space so that when this is finished, we have a place to go to for festivals and stuff that are fantastic. What I'd like to sort of talk about though is the future and how we move forward in this as well, because we have a bit of downtime now, and this is probably the time that we need representation in order to progress, develop, and move forward. There's a few points that I'd like to personally raise that these are just my opinions and ideas, and I think they might be useful, and it's worth getting them out in the open. So, first of all, I'd like to just have a wee. I'll just throw out some ideas. Um, I think that we're completely underrepresented generally in terms of what we have here is fantastic. We have a high level, a big talent pool of musicians, and I think that we could expand out further. I think that there's a real branding issue here with our representation, and because we don't have that, like there's a really great connection between our MPs and our executive and America and the Irish American community, and that is no way exploited enough. That we're not brought over more to meet these Irish American centres, that we don't get, for example, tour runs, that we don't have a special dispensation or a special agreement. For example, with Nashville, Nashville's a sister city. If musicians want to come to Ireland or the UK, their visa is probably 170 odd pound, whatever it is. It's probably changed since, but it's much cheaper than it is for us to get a visa to work in America, and that's totally unfair. And that needs lobbied against and talked about so that we can actually go and do these things without spending £5,000 on a visa that you mightn't actually get approved and lose the money anyway. There's an issue there. Closer to home, we need to look at then the focus on cool and young musicians, and that's like there's a whole coattailing issue that's been here for decades, and it tries to follow a pattern that it's never really investing in music properly. There have been some great investments in music and art, and I'm not taking away from that, but generally there seems to be an issue with focusing on young teenagers and supporting those people and those musicians, when realistically they probably have the most support anyway with all the colleges that exist with free courses on level 3 diplomas and things. Really, starting as a musician has nothing to do with age. You can start at any age, and we should be focusing on that. And there should be beginner level funding, no matter what age you are. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be funding, just beginner level places where you can go to contribute and develop and learn. And that should be offered to enhance our cultural space and to be able to offer things to people. And also that we're not just focused on GDP as a country all the time, that we can offer relaxation. So there should be a beginner element to anything that we're doing from this point on. Also, mid-level and high level. So I had chats with people here asking for help, and a lot of the time, not that I'm doing particularly fantastic, they said we can't really do much more for you here. There should be something in place that we have pathways, tours, booking agents, those type of things that you can talk to, almost like a Rolodex of people that are available to you. It doesn't mean you'll get it, but that information would be very useful. We're not really very good at coming together, and we probably need to unionise. My third point in that, and this isn't an attack on the bars or anything, like I'm not trying to do that. We really probably, we really definitely should have our own venues that somehow we own that are non-profit. That's something that would be very, very useful to us. That it could hire musicians on downtime of tours or work and those type of things as well if we need it, that we all contribute to, that are non-profit, and it goes back into making the venue better or buying more venues. A big issue in Northern Ireland is the ability to obtain even drink licenses for events that you want to put on. This is very easy in places like London and stuff, and other places where you can rent out a space and put on a drink license. And that makes it financially viable to put on an event, because then you can make the money off the alcohol, pay all the bands, pay all the staff. At this point, we really depend on ticket pricing. But with ticket pricing, if you're charging £10 or £15 for a gig, apart from places like the Sunflower Bar, which are fantastic, and smaller venues, if you want to upscale that a bit, you're stuck without paying big money on venue hire, security costs, public liability insurance, and that's all on you before you do anything. And that makes it much harder, as well as paying a band or other musicians to play with you, and sound engineers and things. And all these people deserve to be paid, but it makes it impossible, and that's sort of detrimental to our culture as well. I think there should be support in that, support in grassroots venues. Also, a lot of places aren't venues, they're bars that have PA systems put in, or that you bring a PA system to. And that's the big cover scene, and the cover scene before COVID was doing particularly well here. And that's fine, and it's a viable part of music, and it's necessary, and it's great, and there's a lot of great musicians in it. But we also have a whole original music sector that just isn't being catered for, that isn't being looked after, and that all venues that used to have stages are closing down or are pricing musicians out of doing things. So much so that we're all dependent on festivals, and great festivals like the Nashville Songwriters Festival and the Open House Festival, they actually provide us with stages. And that shouldn't be the case, to just play once a year, twice a year in your own place. A lot of us, like myself, go further afield to play gigs in like the Netherlands or Belgium or Germany or those type of places. And we shouldn't necessarily have to do that. We should be able to build a stomping ground here. Another point is, maybe we could have, if we are creating some sort of union thing and around venues, and maybe putting on our own festivals. I know I've been talking to a few people about that, where we take control of the festivals. And when I say we, I don't mean me. That's not what this is about. I kind of just want to get these ideas out in the open and see what other people think and what other ideas are there. A lot of the times we sort of just talk about these things amongst ourselves and nothing happens, or we fill in application forms and talk about them and nothing happens, or we fill in feedback forms and no one ever sees them, and the conversation doesn't really exist in the public, and it probably needs to. Just as we're discussing other things in terms of statues and what belongs, what do we want from music as a collective, and then go out to society and say, what do you want from music and what do you want? And we can find things in areas where we can provide these things. If we start a festival where we promote local talent, and other areas in the UK and Ireland start festivals that promote local talent, and it's a type of a union thing, we can start to rotate places and positions, and do different days where the basically the festival moves to other countries and those are other counties, and then that moves to Belfast, and we see Scotland for a while, and we see England for a while, and we see Wales, and they get to see Northern Ireland. Why can't that happen? Yeah, there's a load to talk about. I don't want to just sit and rant, but I would like to just start a conversation publicly about how we progress. There's a lot to do with recording too, and I don't want to be the person that talks about that. But maybe you have some ideas about your marketing, about your recording, about your gigs that we want to put on. How do we progress this further, and how do we seek representation that's going to help us expand this already fantastic brand, but it's not being utilised enough to help us and to help our cities and the province as a whole. Cool. Hopefully it's a chat worth having.